The content of this podcast is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended as, nor should it be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. Hello, this is Karen Nickel, family nurse practitioner, and you are listening to Itchy and Bitchy, a podcast that provides answers to your many unanswered health questions. As I mentioned in the last 3 episodes, after 9 years of hosting Itchy and Bitchy, it is time for the podcast to grow up and evolve with new hosts and a slightly different format. Growth and change is good, I keep telling you that. Also, remember that if you get a hankering to hear my voice again, all of the previous Sweaty and Pissed and Itchy and Bitchy episodes will remain on the same podcast feed, all 215 episodes. As I have shared in the past 3 episodes, Stephen Miller and Keith Hnilica will be the future hosts of Itchy and Bitchy. As hosts, they will have a comprehensive approach to wellness with a focus on connecting human health, animal health, and environmental health. This is the 4th of 4 episodes, and the tables will be turned during this episode because Stephen and Keith will be interviewing me. Dr. Stephen Miller is an acute care nurse practitioner who, during his 26 years of practice, has become known for his expertise in diagnosing and treating cardiovascular disease, and Keith Hnilica is a veterinarian and board-certified veterinary dermatologist who has been in practice for 30 years. To learn more details about them and their expertise, please make sure to listen to the episodes dated April 4th and April 11th of 2026. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Care.
Hello, Keith.
Hello.
We have arrived at the transition moment. So, what are we talking about today?
What a great way to go into this. I was pondering this conversation, and so many people throughout the stages of life experience mental health concerns or issues, and some are positive and some are negative, that revolve around life transitions. Among the 3 of us, we have 182 years of experience.
Why do I feel like I'm the biggest third?
Ouch.
I'm the biggest third.
And so we have a lot of life experience. Wisdom. And I think the 3 of us have a depth of life experiences across the decades of our lives that have impacted us, and we've experienced them in different ways. So I wanted to look at and discuss sort of major life transitions. Most of those include things like retirement, bereavement, parenthood, divorce, and job loss. And all of those major transitions have effects upon mental and physical health, and the impact varies depending on multiple factors. And so people talk about socioeconomic status or individual coping resources or the nature of transition itself. So there's research available.
Yay.
Longitudinal research on the experiences of major life events. And we determined that it may or may not be necessarily associated with mental health. So one's response to life transitions is not necessarily related. So I wanted to sort of dive in a bit here. And so the points that the longitudinal research points out is that it's the appraisal of those events or the perception of the challenge or impact
that
the
person has as the transition is happening.
That's exactly right. So, for example, you know, you're in this transition now to complete retirement. And how does that look, and how do you perceive that to be within yourself and your lifespan? And interestingly, we mediate the relationship with anxiety and depression and PTSD and loneliness through how we perceive those events. So that's all mediated between those perceptions. There actually is a model that's currently out called transitional stress models. And so those are how this is built. And so I just wanted to, among our group and among the layers of experience, start to open up a bit about our transitions, because I think certainly our listeners are interested in how we cope and how we perceive transitions. So many people get lost in loneliness and depression and anxiety when transitions happen.
So this sounds like a whole discussion about vulnerability.
Oh, yikes. Maybe you can interview someone else.
Well, my thought is that over the years, we've learned to be flexible and we perceive change in different ways based upon those thoughts. And so I'm interested, Care, sort of in how some of your transitions, you've had some really amazing transitions in life, from your theater to Knoxville and transition from medical to just podcast, and now transition from podcast
to nothingness
to absolute
Well, that's not true.
glory.
I'm teasing. But, my listeners all know that I'm an opera singer, and having established an opera career and being well known in the business, and my husband was well established, and then we had a baby. And sorting out how to continue to have a career that involves a lot of traveling and being in different locations for weeks at a time with a baby, and then who became a toddler, who then became a preschooler, all while trying to be a good singer and a decent mother. And my husband was on the road as well. So we weren't performing together, so I was doing a lot of single parenting on top of everything else. So it was really stressful, and I loved having Forrest with me, and I think he learned a lot being around music all the time. But the way I dealt with that is I said to my husband, we need to change something. This is not going to work long term, because Forrest at 9 years old is going to say, I'm not going on the road with you. And maybe he never would have done that, but we don't know. He's his own person, and he doesn't want to be hauled around while we, jump from place to place. So I said to Andy, we need to find a way to be in one spot more frequently. And I was really interested in going to Germany to perform there in a fest, what they call a fest contract, where you're in one place and you get a 2-year contract, etc. Anyway, we ended up at University of Tennessee with Andy taking that job as a professor of voice, which did put us in the same place mostly, and allowed us.
But that's not Germany.
Yeah, it's not Germany. It's Knoxville, Tennessee.
Which is nice.
Which is nice.
Okay.
But, we had different ideas of what being in one place would be. But it's all worked out. Look, I wouldn't know you incredible people if that had not happened. So I think sometimes it's helpful to have the resources to be able to say, something's got to change. Something's got to change here.
Yeah, so I think, to me, what I'm hearing, and it may not at that moment have been completely clear, as in most transitions in life, things are not immediately clear. But I think you're speaking to the testament of resilience theory and pondering the possibilities and how do we play that into a life that can be successful and
make it a positive.
Yeah. And I think our readers, if you ever have an interest in resilience theory, I think it would be great to read on it. It's an incredibly deep topic, but also offers insights into multiple aspects of a person's life and how to get through. And it's not sort of this therapy session. It's more of a logical approach at theories of how people respond to change.
Yeah.
And so I think what you're saying, Karen, is like when you transitioned, you thought, okay, well, we've got to have a workable solution. And it sounds like you were open to from Germany to East Tennessee, that's quite
I had a wide range of options.
Well, and from opera to medicine.
Medicine.
Yeah, and then there was that transition, and that happened because once we moved here, at the time, you really needed to be in the New York City area or in New York City to, get your auditions done, work with your management, get coachings, get lessons, da-di-da-di-da, all that stuff. Now it's changed because we have the interweb. They can do a lot of things by just Zoom auditions, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I decided that I would just change completely, leave singing and go into medicine, which was always an interest of mine. It seems sort of weird and radical, but it actually is a little more cyclical than it appears, since I was a biology major in college with plans on pre-med. Anyway, it just so happens that I was talking to someone and they said, "Oh, did you know there was this program at UT where you can have a bachelor's degree in anything and get your RN and your MSN in a compacted 3-year period?" And I said, even if it's a bachelor's degree in voice performance? And the person said, "Well, you might need to check on that." But anyway, so it was one of those happenstance things that somebody just said the right thing at the right time.
But I think what you're saying to me is that you embraced the change, right? So you embraced it, but then the path forward was that you had something that you engaged in, and you thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do with this. I'm not going to sit around and eat bonbons and gain weight and do all these things. I'm going to come up with a proactive plan where I'm now in new social groups, and I'm going to impact change. And that actually is the basis for social identity model of identity crisis. So it's an acronym. I know, see?
I love this.
I know.
I'm learning so much about myself.
But it's amazing with your own personal resilience and that change that you fell into that CIMIC model, because that's something that you created, and it took energy to create it, and it took proactive steps to make it happen. And you didn't get consumed by the can'ts of your life, what you couldn't do or what you wouldn't do, or where you were locked in.
So how much similarity was there between the artistic opera side and the medical side? Because they would seem very divergent, but as a practitioner, there is an art of medicine.
Well, there is an art of medicine. I have to say, I think first of all, my life skills, because I went into medicine later in life, late enough that everybody in the class I was in were probably at least 15 years younger than I, and I was the grandma of the group, the only one who owned a house. So I think that there are a lot of things that I was able to bring to the exam room because of my life experience and my experience in the opera world. I mean, when you work with conductors and directors who are very demanding and very difficult, you learn to have a tough skin. I mean, you figure that out. And you also have appreciation for people who are on the receiving end of that kind of behavior. So I think because of where I came from, I was always a good listener. I'm very compassionate. I think I just saw the beauty in the medical puzzle, and I loved solving those puzzles. And I know that what I experienced for the first 20 years of my adulthood impacted in a positive way how I practiced. And I tried to bring a sense of humor. I mean, I always took everything seriously, of course, in terms of health and wellness, but I always brought a sense of humor into the exam room.
And your patients have missed you desperately.
They have.
So how long were you in practice?
22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
And then you retired?
I retired
from clinical practice.
From clinical practice.
And kept doing this podcast.
I kept doing the podcast, and then I lasted 2 months in retirement, and that's when I designed the course for perimenopausal and menopausal women and started getting people to invest in a course that would help them in these perimenopausal and menopausal years, because I realized even after 22 years of doing it, there were still so many women out there who couldn't find the help they needed in that transitional time of life. It was so frustrating to me to see that was still going on. So that's what led me to start the course.
So kind of expanding your footprint from a local clinical practice where you can see 26 patients a day, hopefully, God forbid, but that happens, to a national, international footprint where really you can provide one-on-one care for people around the globe.
Well, and it is a course setting, so that challenge was if what I did in the exam room for these women could translate into a course setting where I am not their provider, but I'm giving them all the information they need to get better during these times when there are so many symptoms that can happen for women. And there are so many things that you can do without prescriptions even that can help. So it was an interesting transition in that regard. And I wasn't entirely sure that it would be successful going from the exam room to a classroom, online classroom, but found that it worked even in a course situation.
So your relative resilience was clearly moderate to high, and your ability to accept risk was moderately high.
Yeah.
And so the combination of both of those things, I think, leads to success after the fact. Like, you continue to press in on things. And so I think your greater calling there would have been looking at population health, and you get that perspective from nursing, and how do I, as one person, impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of people.
He's signing you up for a PhD. Public health
that
degree.
Ain't happening.
Master's in
but
public
I think
health.
what it is, though, is in your nursing career and in the nursing literature, there is loads of information on impacting populations of health and population change, and how do we use a quality perspective to do that. And I think using the course and using the podcast to be able to impact a group of people, women, and have that platform offers you that. And that essentially helps you with the transition, because you've done something that feeds your desire to help and do better for others, right? So Keith has had some transitions.
Both of you have.
Yeah,
So,
many. And we'll talk about all of this and that.
I wasn't really done with Karen yet, but okay.
But wait, before we go on to Keith or Stephen, and both, but one at a time, hopefully, we're going to just take a quick little break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. So we're going to talk about other people's transitions other than Karen's transitions.
Yeah, so with each decade, there are some challenges that happen. So classic life transitions from, say, 10 to 30 includes things like puberty, education, leaving home, early relationships, parenthood. And then from 30s to 60s, it's things like divorce, widowhood, job loss, empty nesting, and retirement. And then 50 plus is retirement, bereavement, caregiving, chronic illness, and relocation many times. So clearly, we've all had lots of transitions. Keith has had some transitions in life. And so I think I would be interested in his perspective as now I want to tell the viewers, now, clearly in this group, there's a higher level of intellect with a lot of degrees layered on, and that does weigh in on one's ability to be able to respond to transitions.
Well, I was going to say, too, when you were talking about my resiliency, and I think I do have resiliency, and I do have a creative mind that I think, I could do this, or I could do that. But I also have a lot of support.
Right.
I have a lot of support. I have a husband who, if I have a crazy idea, he's like, okay, that sounds fine with me.
So were your transitions planned, though? So did you always have sort of the next step is going to be this?
No.
And the no. Did doors open and you walked through them, or they were random acts of opportunity?
I think doors opened and I took them. Having that conversation with someone saying, there's this program at UT, I could have gone, okay, fine. But I thought, man, I'm looking into this. And as a matter of fact, I went to the nursing school and they said, well, you're going to need these prereqs based on your transcripts. And I wanted to get in the fall, and this was already late fall, like we're at December. And I needed the spring semester to get these prereqs done. So I went into the admissions people, And I sat down with a woman, and she said, well, admissions for the spring semester are closed. And I said, oh, listen, look at me. Time she's a wasting. I cannot wait another year to get into this school.
And you were an opera diva.
Yeah.
So that helped too, I'm sure.
And she just laughed and she said, okay, you could enroll for the spring semester.
And, this is clearly transition care that you and I share. I previously was a nuclear chemist and decided to go back to graduate school at 30. And then in my mid-50s, went back and got my doctorate. And so making those transitions, it takes a lot of courage, first of all. I think it takes a lot of wisdom in researching options that are available and thinking about successes and what can be successful and sustainable. So we try to think them through.
Right.
And then there's the value that comes to you from the transition, your personal value that grows. So yeah, that transition for me, I was not happy as a nuclear chemist, and so I wanted to get back into healthcare. I worked in healthcare in high school and this and that, so I decided to do the same type of thing. I went in with a bachelor's in chemistry and biology.
Yeah, a little bit different than voice performance, but okay.
And applied and got in. I only applied at one school, which was, for whatever reason, I was arrogant enough to think I didn't need to apply elsewhere. I don't know. I just didn't. And so I ended up getting in at Vanderbilt, and that worked beautifully for me. But it was such a positive, growing experience. And that's another reason I'm kind of interested in asking Keith about some of his transitions, too.
Yes. We're going to take another really short break, and we will be right back with more fascinating transition stories. Be right back. Welcome back. So, Stephen was saying that Keith might have a transition story for us.
Yes, Stephen.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So, Keith, tell us, you had the bereavement experience at a really early age.
Yes. So my father passed away when I was 18. And interestingly, his father passed away when he was 18, and his father's father passed away when he was 18. So when my children turned 18, it was a little bit of
nerve-wracking?
A little nerve-wracking. Yes. But so, things happen and it's easy to look back, but definitely I had the advantage of being a self-centered, arrogant teenager at the time. And so it was my senior year in high school, and my father was killed in a car accident suddenly. And so I'm Asperger's OCD enough to think that, if you're going to die quickly without pain and suffering is not a bad way to go. But at the same time, my entire life changed. I was living with my father during my high school. My parents were separated. And so suddenly that was gone. But at the same time, I was transitioning to independence in college. So it was a very confusing, very weird transition. It also, retrospectively, I was the beneficiary of life insurance money that opened up opportunities that I never would have had otherwise. So it was a very weird, bizarre kind of situation. Later in life, I was straight married for 19 years, wonderfully happy marriage, and ended up getting a divorce, not my choosing, but now I'm same-sex marriage, so I'm in a gay marriage. And I think back too about what my father would have thought about that, and I never had to deal with that. So in some ways, that's also sort of a different perspective. So
You think he wouldn't have
I don't
embraced
know.
that?
I don't know. That's a really good question. So I think he was
know.
open-minded. He was a professor at Vanderbilt University in medical sciences. So I think he would have been fine. But, as
You never know.
a male child with your father's approval, you never know. So, I definitely do think that being an arrogant, independent teenager softened the blow to some degree. But there were a lot of things changing all at once, and it was hard to separate out which part was the upsetting part.
So it's kind of interesting. You were at that age, you were in the highest vulnerability group for transitional risk for transition, and but yet you had varying circumstances that play into resilience. So in other words, your socioeconomic class was not, it offset some of that a bit.
I had a lot of support. Going back to what Karen said, is that I had a friend group that was very healthy. I was financially, stable. My college career was already mapped out, so that was, not in question.
And did you go into college shortly after he passed?
That was within 3 months.
It might have been a different story if you'd had to move back in with your mother.
Correct.
That would have been a huge life change.
Correct.
Yeah.
I was already planning to leave the home anyway, and then he passed away and the home disappeared, but I was flying off. It was very, very confusing.
So you look at that age group, and that's the peak onset of depression and anxiety.
Right.
When you look across the decades, 10 to 29-year-olds, and the highest level of anxiety and depression rates are among that group.
Yeah.
But then you had resilience in various factors. Your mom also was very well educated, and family very well educated. So I think a lot of that played into your response and your perception of that experience.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So speaking of transitions and coming back to the modern day reality. So with the podcast, I think Stephen and I are very excited about the opportunity to take this over.
Yes, I'm excited for you.
Which kind of begs the question of why? Why are you leaving all of your listeners at this moment of turmoil in the world?
Thanks for making me look like a quitter.
So maybe I should preface this.
I'm teasing.
So at dinner time, Karen told us several months ago that she was going to just end the podcast, and I said, "Why?" And I didn't like your answer. I didn't like your answer. And I said, you have a valuable asset and you have lots of listeners that are listening to you. You can't just leave. You have to do something. And so it ended up that I guess we are the something. But you clearly loved it. You clearly helped a lot of people through the podcast and listeners. So why?
It's interesting. You were asking about the door opening, if that's the thing that helps me through transitions, and it was a fascinating timing to me because Andy and I my husband and I had just spoken about the podcast, and I said, I think it's time for me to let the podcast go. And a couple days later, we had this conversation, and you were like,
You can't do that.
I think we had the conversation that I was thinking about leaving, but when I really decided I think I need to walk away, it was a couple days later that you all approached me and said, we'd be interested in taking over the podcast. And I was like, what in the world? Talk about doors opening.
They're crazy people out there.
No. I was just amazed that door opened literally within 48 hours of my saying to Andy, because I talked about it, but was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. But that moment I had with Andy was really, I think now's the time. And I can't really give a super definitive answer to your question, unfortunately. I just think that, listen, with medicine, there's always something to talk about. There's endless number of subjects to teach about. But I just felt that I had done it for 9 years. I am ready to spend more time traveling and doing things with my husband, and hopefully traveling to hear performances that Forrest has. And especially with the course and the podcast, it really involves taking time on a regular basis to do those things. And I just wanted a little more flexibility, and I just thought it was time for me to do that, especially not that my husband's old. He's going to be listening to this podcast episode, so I need to be careful. But, he's 9 years my senior, and I'm well aware that anything can happen at any day. He'll probably outlive me, but I just think that time is precious, and I want that time with my husband and my son and my friends.
That sounds great. Do you have a favorite memory?
I do.
Because you've done this 9 years.
I know.
That's a lot of memories. 214.
15 episodes.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, it'll be 216 with this episode. So, yeah, I did an episode in which I reviewed my top 10 podcast episodes. So if you want to go back and hear that, you can hear the other ones. But I would say the most amazing gift the podcast gave me is the connection I made with a listener who lives halfway across the world. The story she shared not only connected me to her, but to her entire family. And I truly feel like they're part of my family now, and I'm part of their family. Now they're probably listening to this episode going, what? What? So because this listener shared her story, another listener who is also halfway across the globe heard the story, realized she was having some suspicious symptoms based on this other person's story, and she listened to her body, she trusted her instincts, and insisted on getting a practitioner to hear her concerns and do an appropriate evaluation. She had to go to a couple people, actually, that resulted in getting a very early stage 1 ovarian cancer diagnosis.
Wow. Yeah.
And as you know, early diagnosis of ovarian cancer is extremely rare because most women don't have symptoms or don't complain of symptoms until they're in their late stages of the disease. So it's usually diagnosed at stage 3 or 4. But this listener paid attention to the mild symptoms she was having and sought help rather than ignoring the symptoms and chalking it up to gas pain or whatever. The main reason she did that is she listened to the podcast about this other person's story and journey. And to know that you can help someone like that, I'm going to get teary.
That's okay.
I think it is truly the testament of extending your gifts and impacting
footprint.
populations, and in a way that's totally a different model than what you may have gone into.
But just as impactful.
Yeah, just as impactful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sort of mind-blowing, really. But you were going to talk about, is there something else you wanted to ask me?
How are you feeling? Do you have anxiety?
I don't have anxiety. I don't have any anxiety.
Frustrations.
I am grateful, and I'm grateful, and I'm a little bit sad, and a lot happy.
Yeah.
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 Well, you have been impactful on so many people's transitions in life. And at a later podcast,
You can share that.
Share.
And I'll come back for that one if you want.
I think you would have to be part of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a gift that you have is the ability to help people. I do want to say to the listeners that having diverse friend groups or social networks is vital to maneuvering transitions in life. And if you are feeling vulnerable because of a current transition, bereavement, job loss, any transition, and you're feeling negative impact from it, you should reach out to your provider and reach out to a counselor to work through that, because it is definitely will add value to your health to be able to maneuver some of that. But diverse friend groups, social networks are super important to being able to maneuver. I met Karen through social network, and we've been brother and sister for 26 years. So amazing.
We started practicing together.
We did. And you helped
Incredible.
me maneuver.
And you were a baby and I was a grandma.
No.
Maybe a mother.
No, not so much. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, just having said that, I think the purpose of this podcast has been to help educate people about transitions and vulnerability, as well as resilience and growing resilience. And if any way you can gain any insights from that from our podcast, we are certainly grateful to be able to help in those ways. Hopefully, if you have questions about how to make transitions, we hope you will email us, send messages.
Put on the Facebook page. They're going to be taking over all these places where you contacted me. You can contact them. So, and they might have more other ways to contact because they're more efficient than I am. Keith will probably have like a dozen ways for you to contact them because he's IT savvy.
And have some insomnia sometimes.
And he has insomnia.
Minus getting
Maybe
the
that
printer
could be
to
an
work
episode too. Do you have anything else to share about the upcoming work you're going to be doing together to share with the listeners?
Yeah, so we're going to change the format a little bit and make it maybe a little bit more spicy and bitchy, since it is itchy and bitchy. So I think we have the itchy part covered. The bitchy part we may
you
amplify.
You might work that in easily.
We can work that out.
11.
But I too think, as I originally said, in that I think one of the interests that I had in the podcast is that there's so much evidence out there, good and bad, that people just don't know what to do with. And so part of my goal is, in a conversational way, be able to help people use data in a way that is positive and look for good data to make decisions for your personal health.
Yeah, clarity in that area is really important. So
we're also going to try to have a weekly upload, and we're going to plan to have a data-driven episode every other week, very similar to Karen. And then on the alternate weeks, have a behind-the-scenes, what we're calling a clinic crawl, which is interesting, crazy, adventurous things that happened in the hospital or the veterinary clinic during the week.
Oh, see, the listeners will love that.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, they'll love that.
There are a lot of crazy stories.
There's a lot of crazy stories.
So a behind-the-scenes peek at what it really is like to be a provider in the veterinary and human worlds.
Oh, my.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, I'm listening. I'm going to be listening. All right. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Keith. Thank you, Stephen. You guys are awesome. And I want to thank each and every one of you listeners for listening to the podcast. Some of you have been with me since the beginning, and sharing my thoughts and ideas with you for the past 9 years has meant so much to me. I hope you have experienced lots of learning by listening to Sweaty and Pissed, then Itchy and Bitchy over the years. In researching information for the podcast, I have learned a lot myself, so I want to thank you for that. Again, remember that there are 215, and after this one, 216 episodes available for you to visit or revisit. Wherever you listen to this podcast, please leave a review and rate the podcast. Your reviews and ratings matter. Also, make sure you follow the show so that it will be automatically downloaded. That also matters. I encourage you to visit the Facebook page, which Keith and Stephen will be manning, if that's an appropriate term.
Manning.
The Facebook page is IMB Podcast, where you can give us a like or leave comments or questions for Stephen or Keith. Their website is itchyandbitchy.com, where there are blogs with some of our subjects available for you to read, and maybe Stephen and Keith will add some blogs there as well. Thank you to Forrest Winsel, my son, our producer and composer of our theme music, and the person who does all the behind-the-scenes work to make this podcast possible. And Forrest will be sharing his producing knowledge and expertise with Stephen and Keith to help with the transition. Thanks, Forrest. We're heading up to Baltimore next week to attend Forrest's graduation, where he will receive his master's degree in music composition at Peabody Music Institute. What an amazing journey. If you want to listen to what he's creating, you can go to his website, forrestwinsel.com. Good luck to you, Keith and Stephen. I'm always here if you need me. To my listeners, please, if there is only one thing you remember from all the information I have shared with you over 9 years, please let it be that your health is in your hands.
Itchy, bitchy, itchy, bitchy, itchy, bitchy, itchy and bitchy.